I was all set to start actually living my own life and fulfilling what I wanted to do here on this earth. But then this really relevant news story came on the television, and, well, you get the idea. Good evening once again, everybody. This is Hell's Unicorn, and I've decided to take another opportunity here to stir up a little bit of controversy and hopefully a little bit of debate, because I have a confession to make. Although, as stated previously in my other video on this topic, I think that the shooting in Aurora, Colorado was a horrible event. I think that goes without saying, and I think anybody who would assert that anybody doesn't think that is way off base, in my opinion. I mean, that much is obvious. However, I think there's something to be said about the general attitude, tone, and tenor of this country and the way people are reacting to this, and also the way that the media is covering it, that I think is not out of bounds for discussion. People will say it's too soon, people will say I'm probably being heartless, but I think it's time that we actually break this down rationally and just think about this for a little bit. How many people who frequent my videos live in the Colorado area and know some of any of the people involved in this particular event? The reason why I ask is because in the past day or so, I've been in contact with some local people that I know, friends and acquaintances, and this topic repeatedly comes up. I express little, if any, interest in discussing it, but it just keeps coming up over and over again, and truth be told, I'm kind of sick of talking about it. Not because I think that it's not important to the people living in the state of Colorado, but I don't live in Colorado. I've never met anybody, believe it or not, from Colorado. I've met people who live in my area that came here from California, Arizona, and a couple other states, but I have not had the pleasure of ever going to Colorado or ever meeting anybody there. But just about everybody that I've spoken to in my area, which is all but completely on the other end of the country, other people that have never been to Aurora, Colorado, and have never met anybody over there, have been sort of behaving as though they were actually a part of this event and that they wanted to in some way attach themselves to it psychologically, as if it was something really meaningful. I want to do something meaningful. And part of me has to question the logic of all this. Take for instance, there were 12 people that were killed in this tragedy, and I think that's 12 too many. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people killed every day in a number of unrelated circumstances in this country. And we don't have these massive discussions about changing the way our country functions, changing our laws, anything like that, for any of these other problems, with maybe a few exceptions. There's something sensitive about the notion of a individual who definitely could be viewed as a lunatic going and committing a random act of violence. In fact, I would argue that the randomness of this act is what has everybody spooked, not the fact that people were wounded or killed, because people are wounded and killed all the time. It's actually kind of ironic. You see, in the Dark Knight movie, the previous movie before this one, the Joker actually made this exact same analysis about the way that people operate. If a few thousand soldiers get killed in some foreign conflict over the course of several weeks, doesn't make a whole lot of news. There might be a passing reference to it, there might even be a 15-minute segment of a news show devoted to it, but you don't get day in, day out coverage of the entire singular event, sensationalizing it, and people talking about who's going to purchase the movie rights from it. I have a feeling that that's probably coming down the pike. These particular 12 people, as a result, as what has happened to them and to the several dozen others who were wounded, will no doubt inspire many charity drives, many acts of philanthropy, so probably much more than would really even be needed to actually accommodate the situation of the people that are left behind. I mean, there will probably be more than enough money raised to cover medical bills and to send all of the appropriate well wishes to those who have lost loved ones. But by the same token, there are hosts of other equally important, if not more important, problems local to my area here in Pennsylvania that will get zero attention. Even local media in this place will probably be covering this event and talking about it at length. Indeed, I think that's part of the problem with this country overall, is that people don't pay attention to local media. It's only national media that really counts for these people. And I think that could be a good deal of the reason why our economy is messed up, why as an overall society we have a hard time relating to each other, why just about everything is messed up. We try to see everything in the largest macro terms possible, and we never look at the individual micro situation, so to speak. I mean, how many people here who are really shaken up over this thing, if there are some of you who are, get equally shaken up when something bad happens locally? Like, let's say like somebody that you may not have met but could have met who lives a mile or two away from you suddenly has a stroke and dies. Well, that's a tragedy, and it's not necessarily expected. It's a sudden event, but not batting an eyelash over it. I would assert that much of the reaction that is going on right now at present over this, and all of the people that really feel like they want to be connected to this somehow, I think it relates more to media coverage than it is how terrible the event itself actually is. In several weeks or several months, depending on how long the media wants to milk this, they'll move on and deal with something else. Something else unexpected or terrible will happen. We'll have some new sex scandal or some new mass killing or some other horrid fit of political corruption. And the vultures in the mainstream media will go and flock to that, and all of the people that are glued to their television sets will be psychologically affected by it. Question for everybody. How different do you think this event would be treated if there was no such thing as a television and the internet was not covering this the way the television media is covering it? To tell you the truth, honestly, I only know about this occurring because family members told me about it, because I don't watch televised news anymore. I literally stay away from it. What I know about this event has come through subsequent internet research and speaking to people. I've spoken with some people who actually do know people that are local to that area. These are not people that I know personally. It's people that I've had correspondence with online. But I don't know anybody really who even knows anybody who's local to Aurora, Colorado. How different would it be if we only had newspapers writing about this stuff? Well, if only newspapers wrote about this stuff, few people would know about it because few people really even read anymore. I mean, everybody is just glued to their televisions constantly. And, there's no real critical thought involved in that. And I would argue that the way people are treating this and how they're not really responding in a rational or philosophical way, but more in an emotional way, is part and parcel of the lack of brain activity that goes on when digesting your news from the television set. There's no inquiry, there's no critical thinking, there's no back and forth, there's no debate, no dialect to speak of. It's all just a one-way flow of pre-processed information that I would argue is actually determining how people live a good portion of their lives. And I'm curious, does anybody else take notice of this? And if so, what do you think about it? I mean, do you think that this is something that has an impact on how bad this country has been of late? The fact that people seem to be so focused on blown up individual stories, albeit tragic and horrible though they are, just a small drop in the ocean with regards to all the other stuff going on, some of it a lot more closer to home for most of you. Let me know what you think about this. Until next time, with prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.